Hey guys, welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to talk about splinting. We're going to talk about the different types of injuries you may encounter and the splints that you can use for that person. We're also going to demonstrate how to use a splint. Now, we may find different types of injuries on the trail. Typically, in an extremity, so an arm, a leg, a hand, or a foot, we're going to find things like sprains, strains, dislocations, and broken bones. So a sprain is one that affects a muscle. A strain is one that affects a joint. A dislocation is where the joint is no longer in its normal position. It's out of position. And then we have fractures or broken bones. Those come in open and closed form. An open fracture is one that the bone is sticking out, and we need to take care of that by covering that with a dressing and wrapping it just like we did during bleeding control. Each of these injury types come with pain, discoloration, and swelling or some deformity. Now, there are different types of splints that we can use for these injuries. We have a moldable splint. We have cardboard splints. We can even use a good old tongue depressor or a popsicle stick for a finger. Now, if you don't have a splint, we can even improvise by using sticks. Now that we've talked about the different injury types and the type of splints that you can use, let's dive into applying one. Now let's talk about how to apply a splint. Now, in our scenario here at camp, the kids were having a good time and playing. Justin tripped and fell on his wrist. Now it's painful, it's swollen, and there is some discoloration to it. Now, he's stabilizing the injury organically. He's doing it naturally because it hurts, and it's normal for a person to pull that extremity in and hold it close. If they're not already doing that, we can ask the injured person to do it, or we can start off by applying that manual stabilization, and I can even pull in a bystander to help do that while I prepare the splinting materials. Now in this case, Justin's wrist is injured. I'm going to use a cardboard splint. And what I have to do when I'm applying this splint is, because this is a joint injury, I want to make sure that I get the bones below it or farther away from the body and the bones above it to keep still. So his forearm area are the bones above, the hand bones are the ones below. So this splint, this cardboard splint, is perfect for this type of injury. I'm going to measure it to make sure it covers both landmarks. Now, if he had an injury to the middle of his lower arm, I could take a longer version of this cardboard splint. I could cut it and then shape it to create a back portion to lock in his elbow. Let's go ahead and apply this splint. Now, while he manually stabilizes the injury, I'm going to slide the splint in underneath, and he's just going to release as we get it in there. Now he's going to help me by holding it, and I'm going to pad the empty spaces with some gauze. This helps keep the splint in place. It helps keep it from shifting. And that's really what we want to do. We want to keep the bone ends that are potentially broken from moving. Now that I've got the splint in place, hold it a little bit right there, I can apply my binding material. In this case, I'm going to use roller gauze, and I'm going to roll it in a similar manner as I did previously with bleeding control. Now I get a couple of loops going on the front, on the first end, and I come across. But what I want to be careful of here is I want to leave the injury site exposed. Now I can also tuck it, tie it, or tape it when I've got it secure. So now that I've tucked it and the splint is secure, this is where I want to make sure that the fingers are rolled around the edge of the splint, and I want to check just for circulation to make sure that the fingers aren't turning blue or there's any numbness. If that's the case, then I want to loosen the splint slightly to not obstruct blood flow. Now the next thing I can do is I can take some ice and apply it to the injury. I put a thin layer of gauze I take a commercially produced cold pack, or I get a Ziploc bag and pull some ice out of the cooler and put it on there. I want to leave it on for about 20 minutes. What this does is it reduces pain, and it will also reduce swelling, which increases the comfort of the person. Now let's talk about how to apply a triangular splint. Now, specifically for a shoulder or an elbow or the upper arm, we can use a triangular bandage or 2 triangular bandages to create a sling and swath. Now, we can also use it for another injury or other injuries that are located in the lower arm. We're going to keep working with Justin's injured wrist here, and we're going to apply the sling and swath. So the first thing I want to do is take my triangular bandage. I'm going to open it up. And what I need to do is I need to identify the length of his lower arm. What I'm going to do is create a pocket for his elbow to rest in. So I take the pointed end of the triangular bandage and I'm going to tie a knot. It's going to create a space for the elbow to lock into the sling. Now, Justin is continuing to maintain that stabilization. That's one of the key points about splinting, is keeping that bone still, or that injured site still. So I pass the loop through. I stretch the triangular bandage down so it's supporting the entire limb. I want to keep it in a slightly upward, at a slightly upward angle. You can see that his elbow is locked into the knot here. And then I want to tie the sling around the back of his neck. But I want to do the knot in this sling just off to the side, not directly over his spine. That can create some discomfort while they're wearing the sling. And they're already dealing with discomfort, so let's minimize that. Now the next thing I want to do is I need to fold this so I can secure the sling to the body. So I need to roll this up to create the swath, and that's going to allow me to secure the arm. So I bring it over, I bring it around the back, and again, what it's doing is if we have to walk the person to the car, we're driving them out of the wilderness, this is going to help keep this injury stable, reduce pain. Now that the sling and swath is applied, I want to monitor the injury area. I want to check the fingers, the part away from the body, the furthest part away from the body, for color. These are all things that may indicate the splint is too tight. I would want to loosen it slightly. But my main point with the splinting process is to ensure that the injury site stays still. If I find the person in an unusual position, I want to splint the injury just like I find it. Now, in this lesson, we've talked about different injury types: sprains, strains, dislocations, and fractures. We've talked about different splints: cardboard, popsicle sticks or tongue depressors, moldable splints, even some of the improvised options. We talked about how to apply a cardboard splint, and we talked about how to apply a sling and swath. I hope you found this lesson to be informative. We'll see you on the next one.